Barrow King, The Realms Book 1, an epic LitRPG adventure. Written by C.M. Carney. Narrated by Armen Taylor. 1. The shadows crept in from the corners, stretching, grasping at Bryn as she walked down the dim hallway past dozens of secure doors, trying to ease calm into her frayed nerves. Sweat chilled her. The small hairs on her arms stood on end, leaking heat into the cool air. There wasn't much time. Let it be enough. Please be enough. She cursed her clacking heels, advertising her presence to anything with even the most dullard of ears. She rounded a corner, forcing calm into her nerves, and the smile that had charmed millions warmed her face. This is it. This is the last chance. It goes to shit if I fail. Reynolds looked up from his desk. Bryn's grin grew wide and warm. She liked Reynolds. Better still, he liked her. A deep breath brought calm to Bryn's mind, but all Reynolds saw was the way the silk of her blouse expanded. "Good evening, Miss Caldwell," he said, shifting his gaze to her eyes in embarrassment. "I didn't expect to see anyone in the dungeon, tonight of all nights." "How many times have I told you to call me Bryn, at least when we're alone?" Bryn grinned, a crooked smile bringing a flush to the burly man's face. Her touch to his arm, such a simple gesture, so easily missed, became Reynolds' entire world. Damn, how easy deception comes these days. Bryn swallowed her doubts. There was too much at stake for guilt to turn her course. After a moment, Reynolds regained his professionalism. Bryn saw the man bury his desires under a veneer of responsibility. "I thought everyone was up at the gala." His tone hovered on the border between curiosity and suspicion. Bryn had to ease those thoughts back. "You know, Mr. Bouchard, always some last-minute tweak." To heighten her authority, she held up the pulse drive, forcing her hand steady. It was a perfect copy of the one that Alistair carried at all times, a master key to the realms. Reynolds nodded and sat upright. Bryn didn't think the ex-military man could be more at attention. Even he knew the tiny device was the literal key to power. Bryn inserted the pulse drive into a slot on Reynolds' security desk. A tense moment hung heavy in the air before a panel swooshed open on the blast-grade metal door. A biometric scanner powered to life, the green glow adding a sinister hue to the room. Reynolds stood and held his hand over the scanner. Reynolds hesitated, and Bryn saw his shoulders tense. She could almost see his thoughts. Why would the VP of Public Relations need access to the room behind the door? He paused, palm hovering over the sensor as doubt thrashed through his brain. Bryn's mind was lightning, seeking an out. "And here I thought I was higher up on the corporate ladder," Bryn said, adding a sexy pout to her voice. "It should be Schechter down here, not me." Bryn paused, finger to lip. "But Mr. Bouchard said I'm the one he trusts, so I guess that's something." Reynolds' shoulders relaxed. He, too, thrived on the approval of Alistair Bouchard. Reynolds' reverence was almost religious, akin to being chosen by God. Bryn heaved a silent sigh of relief as Reynolds activated the sensor pad and turned with an intense stare. He held the handle in a fierce grip, muscles tensing and releasing as his mind battled. "Typical Alistair. I'm sorry, Mr. Bouchard," Bryn said, mustering schoolgirl embarrassment at her calculated faux pas. He probably decided the Dragon's Claw Inn needed cream-colored curtains instead of eggshell. A smile crossed Reynolds' face. Everyone at Sacrosanct Integrative Networks knew the big boss's obsession with perfection. Bichard had a literal army of programmers, but they had only the smallest input on the project. Bichard handled all the core coding. Reynolds chuckled a tad. That's what makes him the best. Always willing to go that extra inch. Paint the underside of the drawers, Bryn said, repeating one of Alistair's favorite mantras. Paint the underside of the drawers, Reynolds said in response, as if it were a religious phrase. He pulled the door open with a fluid motion. Bryn flowed past, tracing his arm with a light touch as she passed. This has to work, Bryn thought, forcing calm with a measured and confident pace. She neared the corner. One more turn, and her quarry was hers. Reynolds' sharp voice called out, Miss Caldwell! Bryn took a slow, calming breath as she turned back, remembering the man's history, the man's training. Bryn knew the things he could do. She smiled as he came into view. Don't take too long, Reynolds said. His intense stare chilled Bryn. Had she conned Reynolds, or had he been playing her? Seconds became hours before a grin eased Reynolds' face. If anyone deserves the party upstairs, it's you. Bryn masked her relief under a veil of embarrassment. I'm just a girl who talks to people, Reynolds. I'm the least important cog in this machine. You're much more than that, ma'am. Much more. Reynolds smiled and eased the door shut with a hiss and a metallic clang. Bryn's heart raced, locked in a literal dungeon, cool and dark with no way out. Bryn turned the corner and entered the Nexus chamber. The long room pulsed with heat despite the frigid air pulsing from the vents. Long rows of linked quantum cores shot into the distance. The quantitative power in this one room was staggering. Bryn walked up to the control dais as a large holovis projector came to life. Bryn inhaled, gripping the pulse drive in her fist. Reynolds feared the small device as much as she did. It was the key to a new world, a world unaware of what was coming. She shook with the full understanding of the desperate gamble she was taking, one that may very well cost her life, a gamble that might save millions more. Bryn plugged the pulse device into the slot on the desk. Swirls of light pulsed inside the small device, and, a moment later, a calm voice rose in the room. Access granted. Welcome back, Mr. Bichard. Bryn glanced over her shoulder one last time, knowing she was alone but still needing to look. She pulled a second pulse drive from her bra and knelt. Gentle pressure against the dais caused a panel to slide open. Bryn plugged the second drive into the backup access port and stood. Bryn's fingers sped across the keyboard, seeking the hidden directory Sean had installed. His risk was as big as hers, bigger even. If Alistair knew what Sean had done, what she did now, both would disappear. Bryn was sure of that. A prompt shone on the holoviz. Upload patch. A blazing yes blinked in time with her thundering heart. Her finger hesitated over the panel. Thump, thump, blink, blink, thump, thump, blink, blink. Her finger spiked down, and the patch cycled into the quantum core. It wormed its way into the billions of lines of code, altering the tiniest fraction of their purpose. A moment later, the upload finished, and the second pulse drive ran a purge, erasing any evidence. Only Reynolds knew she had been here, and he was so in awe of Mr. Bouchard that he would never speak to the man unbidden. The risk was minimal. It had to be. Bryn allowed herself one last look into the infinite worlds contained in the room. I have no choice. Alistair Bouchard must be stopped. Bryn pulled the pulse drive from the core. A deep sigh released pent-up tension, the release that comes with knowing whatever happened now was out of her hands. It's up to you, Finn, Bryn said to the empty room. I'm so sorry.